Hello, and welcome to Cybersecurity Today. I'm Jim Wiggins, your host. Whether you're joining us for the first time or a regular viewer, we're thrilled to have you with us. Let's start by letting me tell you a little bit about our show. In this 30-minute episode, we aim to demystify the intricate world of cybersecurity. Whether you're just starting out or are an experienced professional, there's always something new to learn. And today's episode promises to be particularly enlightening. Let's give you a glimpse of what's coming up. First, we begin our show with what's called Cyber Bites. This segment offers insight into current events in the cyber world. Then, in our second segment, we'll be discussing CompTIA's Vantage Point, Overlooking the Digital Horizon, with Dr. James Stanger, the Chief Technology Evangelist at CompTIA. Dr. Stanger will be discussing the role of CompTIA in the cybersecurity industry, trends and challenges, how to help the cybersecurity workforce, future trends, and so much more. It promises to be an enlightening conversation. Okay, so let's get into the Cyber Bite segment and talk about what's going on today in the cybersecurity industry. The Federal Bureau of Investigations and CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, have jointly released a cybersecurity advisory highlighting the tactics of the Avos ransomware. Detected targeting vital U.S. infrastructure sectors, Avos utilizes legitimate software and open source tools to penetrate victims' networks. Once inside, it employs data extraction strategies and threatens the publication of stolen information for additional ransom demands. The advisory, part of the Stop Ransomware campaign, equips providers with defensive resources and information to combat these threats. In other news, the U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, has identified a high-severity flaw in Adobe Acrobat Reader and added it to its known exploited vulnerabilities catalog. This specific vulnerability, requiring user interaction such as opening a malicious file, could allow attackers to execute arbitrary code. Adobe addressed this flaw earlier this year through exploit codes are available online. In addition to the Adobe flaw, CISA detailed vulnerabilities in Cisco, Microsoft Skype, Microsoft WordPad, and HTTP2, urging federal agencies to address them by October 30th, 2023. Those are some of the headlines that are making news. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be back with our guest, Dr. James Stanger, and discuss CompTIA and what it sees from its vantage point above the IT and the cyber industry. We'll see you back here in just a few minutes. Welcome back to Cybersecurity Today. In our next segment, we're delighted to have Dr. James Stanger with us today. He's a renowned figure in the cybersecurity world associated with CompTIA. CompTIA is a leading voice and advocate for the global information technology ecosystem. Established in 1982, it has since become a major force in the IT industry and cyber, playing a pivotal role in advancing the IT profession industry through educational programs, market research, networking events, professional certifications, and even advocacy. James, a warm welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the time you've taken to bring us in and talk about CompTIA.
Absolutely. I thought maybe for our viewers, if they haven't heard about CompTIA, maybe we could start off with asking you to talk about what CompTIA is and what are its goals. Can you speak to that for a minute?
You bet. Its goals are to move forward and represent the interests of the entire IT industry, IT, cybersecurity, etc. We work with managed service providers and create a membership community there. We work with very large corporations, small to medium businesses. We offer advice and advocacy. We're also an education company. If you've heard of A Plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, all the pluses, we do that. We also now are very much in all areas of the spectrum of technology-based education, from digital literacy, digital fluency, etc. The idea for CompTIA is that as we move forward the interests of the tech industry, or I like to say, we move forward the interests of technologists in all industries. That's why we very much have got into education, for example.
Understood. Can you now speak to a little bit about how CompTIA plays in the cybersecurity space?
One of the more obvious areas where we play in the cybersecurity space is Security Plus has very much kind of become the de facto standard for kind of entering into that space. But we also play, I think, a more subtle role, a more nuanced role. I'll focus on the education side of it, for example. We help people prepare for understanding not just cybersecurity job roles, but to get a proper foundation so that they can be ready for cybersecurity. So A plus has normally been seen as, well, that's a help desk cert, right? But really what it does is it teaches how endpoints work. Network Plus focuses not just on configuring a router or switch or whatever, it really talks about how those endpoints communicate, right? So it really gives people a very strong foundations. That's very much one of the areas where we play in. Others, though, we work a lot, for example, with managed service providers. I was just talking to Wayne Selk, who does fantastic work for us at CompTIA, and he's done a great job in, for example, teaching incident response and working with managed service providers to kind of work more security into what they do. So there are a lot of different flavors of what we do with cybersecurity, and a lot of different ways that we contribute to cybersecurity. Another area, I'll end with this, is with various governments. Over the last few weeks, I've been at the Billington event, working with Mark Gorak at the Department of Defense, helping implement the 8140 program. Then I went over to Spain, where I was at a conference called ENISA, and they have something called the ECSF. It's a framework much like the NIST what NIST NICE does. We work with organizations such as NIST NICE, with NIST. In fact, I was just on the phone with someone at NIST talking about quantum encryption. So there are a lot of different areas where we at CompTIA affect, not only in the education side of things, but in the implementation side of things.
So all of those terms you used, A plus, Network Plus, Security Plus, I believe they're personal certifications. You mentioned about the IT space that they play in. Can we talk for a moment about some of the cyber-focused personal certifications that are available through CompTIA that might be a little bit higher up on the ladder above A plus and Network Plus? Can you speak to that for a moment?
You bet. I'm particularly proud of these because when I was managing products, we came out with a couple of them. So we have an entire cybersecurity pathway. And you could argue that pathway, you have to enter where it makes sense. That pathway could, I suppose, start at A plus, but really it starts with Security Plus. And as you talked about, we have, for example, Pen Test Plus, which focuses on the idea of red teaming. We also have something called CYSA Plus. It's our security analyst cert. So for security analytics, looking at data sets and then identifying patterns. So not just, hey, I can look at Splunk or QRadar. It's like, no, do you know really how those tools really work? And can you work with aplomb moving from any one of those SIM elements or any of those kind of intrusion detection systems? So there's a couple of them. We also have a new series of products that we're coming out with. It's the X series, that's Advanced Cybersecurity. And our CASP Plus certification is now going to be called CSX. And it's very much geared even more so on advanced networking. That was created initially as almost a custom project for the U.S. government, where they said we need people to go in and drop into a desert, a jungle, et cetera, and set up an instant network, and it has to be secure, has to be robust, has to be resilient. So that's why we've gotten into this entire range of security certifications, not just that that de facto standard of Security Plus, but in more advanced, because we really focus on the job roles. And that's why we come out with things like Pen Test Plus, CYSA Plus, and CSX.
Understood. Understood. Thank you. I'd like to also ask your perspective on what CompTIA is seeing as some of the biggest challenges in the cybersecurity industry. I mean, I think CompTIA has a unique vantage point given the association with all the different IT players and a lot of cyber players. Gives you an opportunity to kind of aggregate a lot of that kind of thought leadership, if you will. What is CompTIA seeing out there on the horizon?
You bet. A couple of things. First of all, we've really noticed that a lot of organizations struggle with incident response and really being able to handle that. For example, our managed service provider community has to do incident response not only for themselves, but for their customers. We also are very interested in threat intelligence, and we have an ISAL, CompTIA ISAL, information sharing organization. And the idea of the ISAL really is born of the fact that CompTIA really has in its DNA the idea of implementing solutions, whether that solution is something, from a customer experience or cybersecurity. But on the horizon, some of the things that we're really seeing, the impact of automation. We're looking at what the impact is of artificial intelligence. That's happening much faster than people think. I believe that artificial intelligence more and more is going to find its way into job roles rather than, as a separate thing. But that's just, I guess, my opinion. We'll see what the subject matter experts have to say the next time Security Plus or CYSA Plus rolls around. Interestingly enough, with CYSA Plus, our security analytics cert, that's just been refreshed. And it's been interesting to see how with automation, a lot of skills that were considered, hey, that's really neat skill 2 iterations ago. With this iteration, that's gone. And it's not gone because it's gone really because automation has taken care of it. And so we've seen I call it a leftward shift or a northward drift of skills. You have to be a little more on your toes these days to stay ahead of the game.
So that begs the question, what is CompTIA doing to kind of help organizations mitigate those threats? Are there any kind of white papers? Is there any kind of research? Is there any kind of guidance that CompTIA is coming out with for the workforce and or organizations to try to address some of these concerns? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's almost like my boss, Tim Herbert, asked you to ask that question. I work for the research department. When it comes to research, you can go up to CompTIA.org and you can check out various resources. Probably the easiest way to do it is to Google for them. Couple of areas. People are always very curious about the job market and what's going on. And it's more than just, hey, we offer education. Because we like to implement, we actually put together cyberseek.org, cyberstates.org. And we've done that in conjunction with NICE, with NIST NICE, and also a company called Lightcast, research outfit. But various organizations from SANS GIAC, ISC2, contribute to that real-time information. We also do a monthly jobs report, and it comes evergreen. You can go to just type in CompTIA monthly jobs report, and you'll see what happens there. And that's something that gets a lot of traction. I'm heading to Australia. We have the Australian, it's called Australian Cyber report, and that's very similar to our Cyber States. Cyber States is very much based on the United States. There's that. But we also have the cybersecurity status report, or the cybersecurity report for 2024. Comes out every year. The 2023 report's out. The 2024 report is out now. We also have the industry outlook that comes out every year, and the new one will be coming out shortly. So as far as guidance in so many different areas, we have free research, much of it evergreen, that comes out every month. A lot of it yearly, every 6 months even. But it's research that we put out, and it's freely available, not just to members, but to anybody.
So beyond the artificial intelligence and the automation, are there other emerging cybersecurity technologies that CompTIA is excited about that you might be able to share or provide perspective on?
Yeah, one thing that I've seen enter into various areas, whether it be even before Security Plus, A Plus, for example, it's worked its way into Security Plus, Network Plus, operational technologies. People will talk about IoT or SCADA or whatever. IoT is, your smartwatch or whatever, but SCADA is what controls a diesel, a diesel generator or a wind turbine or what have you. Operational technology, there's increasingly a convergence going on between the IT world and the OT world. Before they were all separate. And so we're seeing that work into job roles in a serious way. And it's not just because it's a fad that we, put our finger up and, oh, the wind's blowing, and so we'll talk about OT. It's something that's really impacting IT departments. And those things, when I say those things, the IT devices and the OT devices, these different protocols, but yet they're being placed into the same device. So there's one device that will have these two different ways of talking on it. And it's a little interesting to see how the industry is coping with that. So it's interesting that as those things come together and are used in the same device, it kind of actually shows the divide in knowledge that IT workers have. OT workers they know their stuff, but they don't know IT, and IT vice versa. So it's been interesting to see that. So I think that's a major trend that we're seeing.
That makes a lot of sense. You talked about incident response as being a capability that organizations struggle with. We've talked about automation. We've talked about artificial intelligence. And now you're talking about OT. I'm curious from a skills perspective, do you envision those as being kind of hot cybersecurity skills, or are there those plus others? How would you guide somebody who came to you and said, hey, James, I'm interested in getting into cyber. What skills should I really be focused on trying to acquire? Any thoughts on that?
Question. We did a survey of about 500 CIOs, CSOs, people at manager level and higher. And we asked them a very unfair question. If you had to pick one thing, just one thing, what would you choose, to get out of kind of this lack of process maturity? In other words, we asked people, what are some of the things that are really causing problems for you? And phrases such as technical debt came up. Jim, technical debt is the idea that if you're, as a programmer or as a person who's implementing a server, you use something with a lower patch level, or you use a library that's a bit old. We'll get to that later. Well, if you don't get to it later, you've incurred a debt. And what'll happen is that if you don't pay that debt back, it's kind of like what happens when you don't pay your car back, right? You get your car repossessed, right? And security is kind of like a country record gone backwards. Do you know what I mean by that?
Sure, absolutely.
What happens when you play a country record backwards, Jim? You get your house back, your dog back, your wife back.
Well, it depends on which record you play backwards. But I remember as a kid growing up, we tended to hear voices that were maybe from the other side.
No, that's rock and roll records. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, rock and roll records is a different story.
Well, okay, fair enough. I thought all records exhibited that behavior, but maybe that was what I grew up with. So
right. But the reason I bring this up is the idea is that if we don't have good process maturity, right, and we allow things like technical debt, shadow IT, and lack of communication, then you've got problems. And when we asked people, well, how do we get out of it? There were some interesting answers. Not very many said, well, AI will help us. Most of them said AI will make things worse if you have immature process. Most of them said communication, increased security analytics, right? But they really focused on what people will call soft skills or durable skills. And just kind of finish this thought. So many people talk about the importance of soft skills, but they never really say why. And the reason why is because as IT professionals worldwide, we have kind of allowed immature processes to kind of take over. And the way to get out of that is by better communication. The better way to get out of that is to kind of focus on some root causes, to get rid of technical debt, to get rid of shadow IT, have better communication. So to finish that thought, I think those are the areas that I think if you were going to counsel someone to, hey, I want to get into cybersecurity, really drill into that, really lean into that thought. That's what I would do.
James, that made a lot of sense. Let's move into another area now. I'm curious as to how can organizations attract and retain top cybersecurity talent? Any thoughts on that?
I think one of the biggest things that good organizations, more mature organizations do is realize that upskilling is the best way to create loyalty. And we've all heard the joke, what happens if I upskill my people and they leave. And the counter response, of course, is what if you don't upskill them and they stay, right? But let's move beyond that one and talk about organizations that are smart about realizing that, yeah, people might leave. I'll draw an analogy. The Navy with their pilots, right, and the Air Force with their pilots. They pretty much know after a certain number of years that most of the pilots are going to go somewhere else, right? They'll become pilots for Alaska Airlines or Delta or something. I think a lot of organizations need to realize what it means to, I use this phrase a lot, negotiate with the inevitable. Don't worry about folks leaving. Get the value you can out of them. If you pinch pennies on upskilling people, you are going to have a culture that doesn't have loyalty. I think of an example of there's one of the major stadiums in New England, football stadium. I know the CIO who runs that stadium, and they did a major culture change over the last few years. They moved into, saying, look, we're going to upskill folks. We're not going to worry too much if they stay or if they leave. We're not going to worry about that. And it was kind of their grand experiment, and it's turned out well for them. Their churn was far lower than it was 3 or 4 years ago. And this is significant because so much of the IT workforce really values the idea of a hybrid workforce week, right? 3 out of 5 days, maybe all remote. Well, this is a stadium you're doing IT for. You kind of have to be at the stadium. And so they solve some really interesting cultural problems with going with upskilling, with mentoring.
Interesting. We've only got a few minutes left. I'd like to talk about diversity for a moment. It seems like the IT space and even cyber has been dominated kind of with male genders. Female inequality has been pervasive through our industry. Same thing has held true with a lot of different ethnicities. I'm wondering what kind of actions CompTIA is taking to promote diversity and inclusion in the cybersecurity workforce. Any thoughts about that?
You bet. First of all, we've done a tremendous amount of research and created free resources. The best way to do it is to Google and talk about CompTIA, diversity, equity, inclusion, DEI and B, right? And you'll find tremendous work documents that we put together for organizations that can really want to change their culture. Another thing that we've done in terms of diversity and inclusion, our CompTIA Spark program. It's an entire division of CompTIA. And what it does is it works with at-risk populations, does tremendous work. Now MJ Shore is leading that up, and just the plans that he has are just tremendous. Another thing I want to talk about is a little project, but one that has had a huge impact in the UK. It's called Cyber Ready. That's the name of it, Cyber Ready. Started with a discussion between Zayshan Zatar, who works for CompTIA, incredible guy, and a couple of government folks in the UK. They created a program where they recognized that in the UK, the percentage of women was about 17% in the workforce. And regularly, with this program that Zayshan put together, teaching out of Bradford, England, every weekend I've been up there, help teach them, teach those classes sometimes. They get cohorts in time after time. And as the people leave the Cyber Ready program, you have at least 35%, sometimes higher, of women, for example. Many people of various minority groups that absolutely dominate those cohorts. So we're actually doing in that a series of pilot projects for many years now, and it's award-winning. Cyber Magazine, Cyber UK gave their two most prestigious awards last year and this year to our Cyber Ready program because there's diversity in there. One last thing I'll end with is we just received an award from ANAB for being a thought leader in making sure that we focus on equity and fairness. So we just received that, I believe, today or yesterday. So pretty exciting things that we've been worked in. It's part of our DNA.
Okay, one of the last questions for you is looking into your crystal ball. How do you envision the cybersecurity market evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Any thoughts on that?
You bet. I think, first of all, you're going to see the impact of regulation get even higher. Whether it be NIS2 in Europe, whether it be the SEC regulations, whether you see efforts to tame or at least bring accountability into spending. You're going to see that these days. Everybody talks about their cyber program or whatever. Frankly, they're duplicating a lot of effort. I think when it comes to the certification world, and specifically in the cyber world, you're going to see the impact of regulation really make assessment-based education more important. The other thing I think you're going to see in the cybersecurity industry is the impact of AI and the impact of automation. And I think that impact, it's hard to tell exactly where it goes, but I'll say this: it will make it so that the talented people can leverage their talents even more. Too often, talented people find themselves doing repetitive work that really can be done by a machine. We're going to see people learn what it means to train AI to do really, truly useful things, not ChatGPT. And we're going to see people really be able to use serious hybrid technologies with, and by hybrid technologies, I'm thinking of Red Hat's Project Wisdom. It's pretty cool. They took Ansible playbooks, Jim, Ansible playbooks, the idea that you can use these a few lines to launch 1,000 servers or update 1,000,000 servers, or to, enable all sorts of fantastic things. Well, imagine Ansible, a very mature technology associated with Watson, IBM's Watson. Now that to me is a really cool example of a project, because instead of this kind of startup moonshot stuff, you're actually working with very tangible and mature processes, and now you're looking to mature them even more. I think that's what you're going to see a lot more in the cybersecurity industry, and we need a lot of smart people to train that AI and continually, iteratively retrain that AI and that automation. To me, that's pretty exciting stuff. That'll be fun.
Understood. Last question for you, 10 seconds left. How can viewers learn more about CompTIA and get involved?
I think one of the first things you could do, contact me at jstanger@comptia.org. You can also Google and check out what it means to even join CompTIA. If you're interested in CompTIA membership, you can Google and check that out. The other thing that you can do, if you really want to join the IT force and really get into it, check out the pathways we have: the infrastructure pathway, our data pathway, our cybersecurity pathways. We've got software development education coming up. It's an exciting time for somebody who really wants to move from being a consumer of tech into being a producer of business solutions. It's a great time right now.
So James, we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming on and offering such invaluable insight to our audience.
Yeah, man.
We greatly appreciate your time. So
Anytime,
guys and
man.
gals, that's going to do it for today's episode. We again want to thank our guest, Dr. James Stanger, for coming in and talking to us about the role of CompTIA and what CompTIA sees from its vantage point atop the IT and the cyber industries. We hope that you found the information in today's show interesting and useful, and that you learned something new about cybersecurity. If you'd like to learn more about cybersecurity today and keep tabs on upcoming episodes, please check out our website at cybersecuritytoday.org. You can also reach out to us with any questions or comments and email us at contact@cybersecuritytoday.org. We look forward to seeing you at our next broadcast. Thanks a lot for joining us. Stay safe and stay informed. Goodbye.